introduce our presenters. Angela Sonor is a AP statistics teacher, advanced quantitative reasoning, and honors Algebra 2 at St. Vincent St. Mary's High School in Akron, Ohio. She holds a Master's of Art in Teaching Secondary Mathematics from Kent State University and a Bachelor of Arts in Business Marketing from Mount Union College. Angela began her career working as a sales consultant for a Fortune 500 company before starting her own consulting business in the telecommunications field. Feeling unfulfilled after several years in industry, she opted to follow in the footsteps of her family members and pursue a career in mathematics education. Angela started teaching at St. Vincent St. Mary's High School in 2004, where she currently serves as the mathematics department chair and the math team advisor. She teaches primarily algebra, pre-calculus, and statistics. She started the AP statistics program at St. Vincent St. Mary's in 2012 and serves as the AP statistics reader in the summers. Angela was awarded the Outstanding Mathematics Education Award, Outstanding Teacher for grades 9 through 12 in 2018 from Greater Cleveland Council of Teachers of Mathematics. She is passionate about professional development and improving mathematics instruction. She is currently involved in the Ohio Department of Education Initiative, strengthening Ohio's high school and math pathways, serving on the statistics and probability work group, as well as teaching the mathematical modeling and reasoning course pilot. Joining her today is Robert Ingles, who teaches physics and engineering at St. Vincent and St. Mary's High School in Akron. Robert began his career as an exploration geophysicist in Houston, Texas. He has been an environmental consultant for most of his career, leading a small company in Michigan before moving to Ohio and starting his own firm, which he continues to run today. In 2006, with the encouragement of family and friends, he decided to pursue a teaching career. He was accepted into a special program at the University of Akron aimed at bringing experienced science professionals into teaching. After completing a special licensure at the University of Akron, he took a teaching position at St. Mary's St. Vincent's in the fall of 2007. While at St. Vincent St. Mary's, Robert started 5 new science and engineering courses, teaches multiple levels of AP physics, advises competitive rocket and robotics teams, and has sent teams to participate in NASA's engineering challenges, including the NASA Student Launch Initiative. He also served as science department chair. Robert has co-published an article in 2017 in the Physics Teacher Journal on the topic of modeling instruction. Robert has a BS and an MS degree in geophysics from the University of Texas at Austin and the University of Houston, respectively. He has a master's degree in education from the University of Akron. And with that, I'm going to pass the baton to our 2 very, very competent presenters.
Thank you. Thank you so much for joining us today. I'm going to let Bob start this session because he's the mastermind behind this class and give you a little bit of a background about how we got where we are today.
All right, I'll just give you a kind of a brief history of how I got there. When I first came into teaching, I didn't think it was going to be as hard as it turned out to be. It looked easy to me. My teaching was basically centered around how I was taught science. We did a lot of verification. We did it all through backwards science, what I like to say. We usually start with inductive reasoning in science, but we were doing it deductively, it turned out to me. Doing recipe labs, things of that nature. It turned out to be pretty boring for me. And at some point, I started to question how much my kids were really learning. And I started asking deeper probing questions and realized that they were just learning superficial stuff and not a lot was going on. I also did early on, they asked me, I think my second year, so I was a pre-med major for a while, to teach bio under another biology teacher. And so I got to teach biology, and I realized that my kids, I was giving them a really large science book. And I remember looking at photosynthesis and the processes that go on in there. And I thought, how the heck are these ninth graders ever going to understand this sort of thing? And I realized that we were probably turning them off of science by doing something like that, where they had to memorize a large book and not really get to do science. I decided to go back and finish off a master's degree at that time. And I was studying at the University of Akron, and I had confided in one of my favorite professors there that my struggles with education, and I felt more like a babysitter than anything else. And she said she had heard of this modeling instruction program down at Ohio State, and under Kathy Harper, who teaches in the engineering department. And I went down the following summer and took that course. And I loved it. It basically taught science from a modeling perspective, where we, in a deductive reasoning perspective, inductive reasoning, where we took students took observations and identified patterns in them, and then started to build mathematical models from that, and then applied that in novel situations to solve problems. I loved it. I went back, I took an advanced course in that, and then for 3 summers before they changed the funding for teacher professional development, I taught 3 summers of that at the University of Akron. At that time, after getting heavily into all of this, I became acquainted with this physics first movement in the US, and started looking at that. It made a lot of sense to me, because with my teaching of biology, that teaching physics before chemistry and physics and chemistry before biology, since biology required all of those requisite knowledge to really understand it, we were doing it backwards, and then reading a little history on it. I think it was 1890, the Committee of 10 or something like that. College presidents had decided that was the sequence we were going to teach science in. And I always ask questions like, why do we still do it? Because that's how we've always done it. And it made a lot of sense, again, to go ahead with this physics first. Reading again into pushback from places was that 9th graders are weak in math. And they don't have the math skills to be able to learn physics in 9th grade. And that's why we were teaching it later in high school. My experience with teaching physics to 11th and 12th graders were that they were all weak in math, and I spent a significant amount of physics time teaching math so that they could do the physics. And I thought, well, it's really not working later on, so why aren't we doing it earlier? And came up with the idea that maybe we could combine. I had actually talked to a teacher that had retired here, a calculus teacher, and we had for years thought about combining a AP Physics calculus class, or calculus based, with a calculus class, and never got around to it, because like I said, teaching is hard, and finding time to do that sort of thing was impossible for the both of us, because I was still trying to figure this stuff out. And but so then again, that idea came up, why don't we collaborate with the math department? And I knew Angela was a good sucker, that maybe she'd join me in doing something. I proposed that to the administration, that we could teach, maybe we could combine a course of physics and algebra 2. We thought we'd do it on the honors level first, because it's hard to mess up honors kids. They're successful despite us. And that turns out to be true. I also was thinking too that if we take the math is a lot of tools. I heard an analogy once, I can't remember where, but somebody used an analogy of carpentry, that in math, and that's how I learned math, that we saw a hammer, we saw what it could do. We were taught about a saw, we saw what it could do. We learned about a screwdriver or something like that. But nobody ever asked me to build something using those tools. So I didn't know how to use them together in concert to solve bigger problems. And if we combine the math with the physics, we would teach them the tools and allow them to use those tools and open that bag up and figure out how to put them all together to solve problems and figure things out. So it made great sense.
I'm going to jump in there. Just
Okay.
one of the things Bob said, as he's going through this journey and I'm watching it from across the hallway because our rooms happen to be pretty close to each other. In the math department, I'm hearing, because I'm teaching the traditional way, I do a little lecture, I have the kids, I thought I was being all progressive and getting them up and doing things on the boards all the time and not just sitting at their seats. And I was pretty proud of myself thinking I was doing, a good job, but I'm still hearing from science teachers, not Bob, but some of the other science teachers too. They don't get it. Whenever they get to us, they can't use it. When they get to the physics, they don't know it. They don't remember it. So retention was always an issue. And I started trying to do some research on what can I do differently from that traditional way that I was always taught, which is here's the content, here's the roadmap, now go do it. And that mimicking behavior. And there just really wasn't a lot out there for modeling within mathematics. I mean, when you look up modeling in mathematics, they give you some word problems and things like that, but there wasn't anything like what the science teachers have gotten to go through in that training. So that was a bit of a struggle for me, but I definitely saw the need. I would teach the AP stats kids, and we had a lot of kids in common with him having the AP physics, and they would come in all excited from his class and talking about things they had done. And it kind of changed my perspective, and I was a little bit jealous. I wanted to be able to do that kind of stuff. So when he asked me to kind of take this on with him, I was really excited. It's really kind of put a jolt in my career, where I kind of gotten to that point where you don't really know what to do. And this is something that was so exciting, and it's just kind of taken on a life of its own. So that's been a really rewarding experience.
All right. So I think the first year we implemented it, we did struggle to try to find to mix the two together. One of our struggles, I think, is we were kind of teaching math and then science, and we could integrate some of it. And then COVID hit that year and kind of knocked us out at the end. And we didn't get to do as much last year because we were struggling with we actually were in class last year, but a fair percent of our classes were online, and then trying to deal with all of that and keep up with things. But we did build a scope and sequence and figured out how to do a lot more. I think we built this into a 20-unit course. We teach a block schedule here, and we have that same block every day we have the kids. And we looked at all the standards for both the physics, high school physics, and Algebra 2. And we figured that we can take about 11 of the 20 units that are physics where we can roll the math in. And about 9 units, we really have a hard time trying to fit the physics to it. So we've set up the scope and sequence so that we mix in there some of the standalone math units, but so they're not all together, so it doesn't feel like a math class or just a science class. And then, like I said, we roll the others in there.
And one of the concerns my math teachers had, coming into this, and not everybody in my department, of course, I'm sure you can relate, bought into necessarily doing this. They were afraid we would get kind of swallowed up by the science, and that math would only relate to the physics and things like that. So it's been good to be able to see that collaboration that we have. I'm learning where the math fits into the physics, and I'm seeing one of the biggest things is how the kids actually do retain the information because they truly deeply understand it conceptually, instead of not having the context and just teaching the math and then they forget it because they don't keep using it. Now they have these concepts, and it's not really about the concepts as much as that mathematical mindset and the critical thinking, but they use them and they see right away. We're very task oriented, and that's something I've learned from Bob and now some of the other things that I'm involved in. And so that fear my math teachers in the department had of them not getting the content they need, not getting through everything, what we're learning, and we don't have the data because, again, COVID hit, so we haven't been able to do as much as we wanted to on that end. But what we're seeing anecdotally is the kids are retaining things at an amazing rate, in my estimation. I was concerned that I wasn't getting through enough content like we always do as math teachers. But it hasn't been an issue. It's actually been quite rewarding in that sense because the kids are really getting a lot out of it.
All right.
If you guys have questions, feel free to put them in the chat. We don't want to just sit here and talk the entire time. It's summer. I'm not I'm not prepared for that. We're not there. We'd love for this to be more conversational, what questions you guys have. We've been doing a lot of research. Like I said, Bob did the mathematical or the science modeling, and I've been lucky enough to find through the Ohio Department of Ed, the mathematical modeling and reasoning pilot, which is very task oriented, which is again, completely changing your mindset. There's not a lot of resources out there, but there are some. And I was just telling Bob this morning, I'm fortunate this year. I'm actually, all 3 different courses I'm teaching are going to be in this modeling format, because the AP statistics I teach, I already do that like that. And now these other 2 classes. So there are things out there.
So there's a question asked, are you co-teaching?
That's a great question. When we first started out, I would say we were both in the classroom and we would interject into each other's teaching or step in and add something, but not really co-teaching that first year. Last year, we did more co-teaching, but I would not say that we were fully co-teaching at that point. This year, we've made a commitment that I will let go. It's hard. What the hard part for me is to let go of some of the things. It's kind of like when you go into management and you got to let people do their job for you to oversee and run the thing. And I have a hard time going, well, that's not how I would teach that physics lesson, and let go and let Angela do more of that. And then saying this fear, watching when she teaches a math lesson that, how am I going to do with that? But we've made that commitment this summer that we're going to step out of our comfort zones, and she's going to take on some of the physics that she's seen me do and teach that math in there at the same time. And I'm going to try to do some of those standalone math lessons. So I've been spending a lot of time reading up on math. And
I'm trying to learn physics.
Right. So.
It's been interesting too, because I think just being in the classroom together, and like I'll listen to Bob and I pick up on a lot of the things that he does. And like he said, we'll interject things here and there. But even just the things that I'm learning as a teacher that are making me a better math teacher, the collaboration that you don't have when you don't have this kind of a system. Just words they use in science classes. I said this in a meeting we had before. There's the way science textbooks explain things and the way math textbooks explain things when you're talking about the same content, it's totally different. And I never really recognized that, but that was a big aha moment for me, because I'm realizing this is what the kids are dealing with. They are learning something in science that is the same as what they're doing in math, but it's called different things or it's done a little differently, and they're not making that connection. So that's been one of the most rewarding things for me is being able to make those connections myself, being able to see the application of the math and how useful it is in the physics, and then working with Bob to kind of get our language on the same page so that we can have those kids fully understand the connections and not see them as 2 separate things.
I wanted to piggyback on that when she talked about terminology in textbooks. That's another thing we're collaborating on. I don't teach physics or even AP physics using textbooks, and I developed. Through the modeling instruction, I had a lot of information from there that I developed packets out of, and that's a hat off to somebody else who I really respect as a modeling physics teacher, a woman in New York City. So I made these packets, and then Angela has started making packets, and now our packets we're integrating them so that there's more. That's one of our struggles, is getting that math in there and making all that stuff flow, to the physics and the math, and making sure that we're doing that. But we love it. I mean, the kids love it. So we hand out we divide it up the units. We don't always follow the way, like the physics. I don't follow the way the textbooks do it, because I don't think they do. They make a lot of sense all of the time. Some things they do, they make a lot of sense. Other things they don't, and how we teach things. But so the packets is another way that we're learning to collaborate and integrate those sort of ideas. We spent some time. There's a question out there. Do we share a classroom during the block for this class? Yes. We work mostly in my playground here, which is an unbelievable classroom. And there's lots of room in the back for them to go and work and investigate. And I've got large workstations back there where we do the engineering competitions and stuff like that. And then Angela has a math classroom that we're going to use. We used a bunch, mainly for just math last year, but read a book this summer, developing a thinking, what's the name of the thinking classroom?
Creating thinking
Classrooms in
classrooms.
mathematics, but I think applies to science and everybody. Peter Lijadal, I don't know if I'm pronouncing his last name right, but if you haven't read
Oh,
that
it's
book as a
amazing.
teacher, it's going to shake you up. But he talks a lot about vertical whiteboards and how to use those in a classroom, and then how to get mobility of knowledge and things like that. So we're going to spend time in that room, which she has whiteboard all the way around the room, so they can divide up and do work on tasks together and solve those sort of things, so we can develop more independent thinking and, like I said, knowledge, mobility, and sharing and collaboration in our students. So we always share, we do share the classroom for the same block. We might be in this room or the other room, or actually move rooms,
Yep.
depending on, so we're very blessed in that way that we have these facilities that we can do these things in, and try to implement some of these new ideas or ideas. Maybe they're not new, they're new to me, so. But,
We were fortunate, the question about co-planning, do we have co-planning, or do we just have to make it fun? And it absolutely is a fun course to teach. We were fortunate last year that we had a common planning period, and I'm pretty sure the year before, we maybe even had a common planning period too. Just by chance that, or I mean, maybe they did do it on purpose, but they didn't tell us they did it on purpose. And this year we are gonna have one day, every other day, we'll have a common 90-minute block. That doesn't mean we always sit down and do that. We are committed to this year, especially we talked about, we've been working together this summer. We were working again this morning on kind of getting these lessons integrated more. So we're doing more of that as this grows, and as we build this, we're trying to do more of that, but we also both teach multiple other courses. So of course, there's got to be time to do all of that and the grading and everything else.
yeah, I find we do have those periods, and they had given us time, but for me, it's a lot. It takes a lot of discipline for us to not let other things interrupt us and do that. So hopefully I can do a better job this year of you know, because those times together, like this time we spent this morning, are so important. And it's, I don't know about everybody else, but it's tough to stop interruptions, whether, you know, not people just coming in, but things that are on your mind, things you want to get done, and keeping up with everything. So you want to do this?
Yeah, I think that the next question, make sure we didn't miss anything here.
Next one's on credit.
Yeah, they do get credit for both courses, so it shows up on their report card as a grade for just this course. I believe, actually, I've not seen the report card. They get a single grade and it's 2 credits. So it's a full year of Algebra 2 and a full year of physics. And it is a single grade, so we grade together and well, we don't grade together this year, we're gonna grade together more. But everything's in the grade book, and we had it in the past years, we had it kind of 50-50 split between Algebra 2 and physics. But this year, since we're doing more of the packets together and more of the teaching together and more, all the tests will be integrated for the most part too. We were just discussing that this morning. It's gonna be just grades. It's not a physics grade or an algebra grade, it's just a grade.
Yeah, 'cause we had like a physics homework part and a math homework.
And a physics test
and
and a
some
math
math
test
tests
kind
and-
of a thing. So, yeah.
So we made that commitment this morning that there's going to be one test grade, and that's going to force us to collaborate on those even more and force the issue so that it can truly become one.
And it is I'm going to skip to this one just because it goes, and then I want to go back to the other question. The question about covering, are you able to cover everything? And it seems like you would need 2 blocks. We have 2 blocks. So we are on a block schedule, but this is a class that is 3rd and 4th period, let's say on one day, and 5th and 6th on the other. So we're fortunate, we have those kids every single day for 90 minutes. So where my other classes on the block schedule, I have them every other day for 90 minutes. We have these kids every single day, which is a really big advantage for us too. So that's how we do get through all the content. I mean, I won't say I got through everything I needed to last year, but we're gonna blame that on the first year of block scheduling and a lot of schedule interruptions through the administration, with COVID and everything else. But yes, it's possible. And when we've mapped it out and the pacing that we do to get through. In fact, I think this year we're adding some things in on the physics side. Am I speaking out of turn?
No.
I thought we were adding some stuff that we hadn't done before. And the nice thing too, being the department head, I've got the ability, and we've gone through this, it makes more sense to maybe do something with vectors this year, even though that's not typically in Algebra 2, because it works with the physics. So we've been able to kind of put some things in and take some things out and put that in pre-calc for the kids as far as that goes.
There's something about a lesson.
Yeah, and this is, let's see, can you give us a few examples of some lessons that you've created? I will say Bob is a showman, and in this school, every student that has Bob Ingles loves Bob Ingles. I think he's given the graduation speech with the kids' shoes more than any other person in the 16 years I've been here, and he hasn't even been here as long as I have, so that's a credit to him. And the kids absolutely love him, and one of the reasons they love him, not only is he extremely intelligent and knowledgeable and always has their best interests at heart, but he knows how to grab their attention and get that engagement and get them excited. So he's developed things like he'll come in at the beginning of class and drop a bowling ball, which is a great way to start a class. So there's some great lessons that he's done. I don't know if you have a specific one you
I
want
was
to
going to talk just about an early one, and I don't know whether I'm kind of like Newton's quote, I can see so far because I was standing on the shoulders of giants. But so a lot of the stuff that I've developed, I've learned from other people or tweaked or read about or involved in the various societies. But one of the early physics units is a constant velocity unit, where the kids are studying objects moving with constant velocity, and that's the model. And at the end of the unit, there's what I call a practicum, where it's like where you and I probably took a course in physics. We had a word problem at the end of the thing. One train's traveling this way at so many miles per hour, and the other train's traveling this way at so many miles per hour. Where do they meet type problem? Well, I've got these constant velocity cars that I can make one go really slow and one go really, really, really slow. And we set up a 4-meter space, and we asked the students to predict where they're going to meet. The joy of this is that that's all I give them. They're 4 meters apart, and they have to come up and they have to figure out where they meet, and they've got to figure it out. And they can do that but either graphically or algebraically, so the math is woven into there. And that's so they can create 2 equations, and they have to ask questions in the beginning. They can't do any trial and error, and then they'll ask questions like, well, can we measure the velocity of the carts? And it's like, yeah, you can measure the velocity of the carts, but we don't give them any hints on how to solve it, and they work as teams on that. And it's fun because some of the more clever students will come up with do the graphs, come up with the equations, and then solve them as a system of simultaneous equations to figure out time and position of where they'll collide. And other ones will actually go, oh, we can do that graphically and put the 2 graphs and figure out where the lines intersect and get the same answer. So that's a kind of a nice way where we've integrated the math and the physics in there. So there's lots of things like that we have in here. And I don't know, I'd have to look through it. My mind is blank.
Well, and we do a lot of, the kids are up and moving, which having the block schedule now, we were fortunate before we had block, we just had 2 periods back to back. So we're used to having that 90 minutes, but it's really beneficial for a class like this because the kids are constantly up and moving and doing things. If they're not, like, one of the things that Bob did that I had not seen before that I love, especially with these little freshmen, is he has these whiteboards that are pretty darn big. I could grab one and show you, but it's far away. So these really big whiteboards that the kids come in, oh, thanks, Bob. And when they're going over homework, like we'll assign or say, okay, pick a number, whichever number, and they get in groups and they write down all the homework stuff from that problem that night. And then they present them all along the back, in the back of the room here. He has little stands they sit on, and they've got this, and this is how we go over homework most days. we don't go over the homework. We don't give them the answers. The kids explain what they did, and the rest of the kids have to say, like, I agree, I don't agree, wait, I got a different answer. And they have to work through, and they have to be able to verbalize and explain why they got that, and sometimes argue and justify responsibly. So we're teaching them those skills, which are so important also as they go through it. And that for me has been a really rewarding thing, because that's not something I ever did. I was always that math teacher that felt like I need to go through the homework and make sure everybody understands it and everything else. And I have to be the center of attention and do it all, which this is very student focused. You know, the only time we step in is if they get to a point where they say, like, they're just completely convinced and they let that really super smart kid that they think always has the answer, and they're wrong, then we, you know, might step in and ask some questions and try and redirect them and everything else. But it's been very valuable just to watch, you know, those kids that are maybe a little more shy, that don't necessarily want to speak. You know, you're not gonna have a choice in this class because that's how life works. And that's been a positive thing.
Is there anything before the behavioral?
Yeah.
needs?
Let's see, resources, curriculum map, and or pacing that we're willing to share.
Yeah, I'm willing to share anything. I've stolen everything from everywhere else. So. Yes.
Yeah.
Of
I'm
course.
not sure how we will do that, and you know, in what format, but I mean, obviously, we're creating this. This is not a finished product, and as we're working through this, like Bob said, you know, today we were meeting. I've done a couple of workshops in the last couple of weeks, and I got some new materials that I'm really excited about, that we're going to try and integrate some of those through. I don't know if anyone's familiar with StatsMedic and MathMedic, and obviously the MMR pilot through the Ohio Department of Ed. So there are other people out there doing that, and that's, you know, we create some of our own, but we're also using a lot of other resources and stuff. But the more people that do this, the spread the wealth, that's fabulous.
Yeah, happy to share everything.
We just have to figure out how.
So, and,
In the exit ticket, there is an opportunity for you to put your email. And I do believe that there's a question that asks if you want additional follow-up information. We will pass that on to our presenters and make sure that you provide that to us so that we can make that connection.
Awesome.
Cool.
That would be great. Behavior issues with students. Yeah, I mean, even though it's an honors level class, you know, we do have a couple of squirrely boys here and there, no offense, but sometimes that are not very mature at this age, that, you know, are maybe not completely ready for an honors level class with the rigor that we have. One of the nice things that I've learned that Bob does really well with the questioning is, you know, when he's going over things and he'll ask a question and you have that kid that knows the answer, so they just tell you the answer, he'll specifically point out or pull out kids that don't know what they're doing. And it's not just a simple, oh, explain this to me, do you understand this? But he'll keep asking and asking and not just kind of let them skate by. So they really have to pay attention. One of the things we're going to do more of this year is randomize the groups completely, and that came from the book that Bob was talking about, so that the kids, you know, have to constantly be changing groups and changing who they're working with, and we're going to make it a situation where, you know, every single person at some point could be called to explain to the class. So having that questioning as we go through and they're working in groups to say, like, do you understand this? Explain it to me, because you're going to explain it to the class. And if you don't understand it, you better ask your teammates, because you need to be able to explain it, kind of a thing, and try and get that ownership. And I think the more engaged the kids are, the less you have to deal with behavior issues. Having said that, I don't think we have any major behavior issues.
no, we haven't.
Kids off task here and there, but
I know that, at least from the science thing, when we were, when I was teaching those professional development courses and modeling, that we would have some teachers that would talk about how they couldn't do that sort of thing, this whiteboarding and this and that. And we had some fantastic teachers that were able to do it in some tough schools. And my professor I worked with at Anita Maki said she'd walk down the hall, and in years past it was chaos, and she'd walk into these classrooms and these students were engaged. And there's a whole bunch of things. I think you can engage all students, not just honors students, but there's a lot of steps you can go through. And I've seen a lot and done some experience and read lots of little things, but again, that book that I read this summer that we're trying to integrate things, and Peter Lizal's book on Thinking Classroom is all about engagement. And if you've got students engaged in thinking, you have a lot less behavioral problems. And I can talk about that because I taught regular kids when I first started physical science here, and it was a disaster. I was waiting for them to show up and fire me, the first year or two, because there was not a lot of learning going on in my classroom, and I was constantly trying to put out fires. But I was just standing there. I was very teacher-centered and reading PowerPoints to my students. So it's a matter of letting go. So, all right.
All right, I'll put in the chat the book that we keep talking about too, shameless plug, but it's a really good book and it's worth it.
I already did it.
Oh, you already did?
I did. I just,
What did you
Thank
say?
you.
Oh, you put the book in there?
yeah. I had a session this morning on that book for the math group.
Oh,
So,
you're kidding
Did you read
me.
it? Did you like it? Am I crazy or?
oh, of course. Oh, so OCTM is having a book study on this book over the course of the next school year. We're starting August 17th. So we will do strategy after strategy and hopefully they'll implement.
Yeah,
That's fabulous because I already asked our department or our principal to buy it for my entire math department because I wanted to do a book study on it for the year. And Bob actually suggested we get it for the entire school because he was so
I
floored
think the
by it.
techniques in there go across, these specifically targeting mathematics, but thinking and engagement in all classrooms are stuff you can use. And
So
the
maybe
thing
they
for
could
me
all
is-
join OCTM.
So August 17th is when that starts through
August
OCTM.
17 it starts, yep. If you
A
go
lot of those
to,
things in there, I've been doing little bits of it in my classroom, like the whiteboarding and things like that, and then figuring stuff out. I realize I've been probably doing 5% when I should be doing 100% of the time. But I knew the things worked, but I didn't have the research behind it, hadn't seen it, and then this stuff was just like, oh my goodness, okay.
right there with you, yep.
I got to get more of this. I'm not doing as good a job as I thought. So
I put that in the chat. So the book study information I have in an email because it goes out to members, so you have to become a member, but I can put OCTM's.
Yeah.
No, here's, if you're interested, put that in the exit survey. And then I'll forward you my email with that information.
Yeah, it's a must read. I didn't read it at the beginning. Bob found it, was like, you need to read this book. You need to read it. And every time we'd meet, he'd be like, did you start the book? And I'm like, a little
that's
bit.
it. Yeah.
There's the book.
Yeah.
I've got it on my iPad so I can take notes and highlight and everything else in it because it's a book you're going to want to mark up and be able to use. But that's
Well,
awesome.
Create some more work because I had to go back. I had to rename. I didn't call it homework. I used to call it practice. And then I read Peter's book and it's like, that's the worst thing I could have called it was practice.
Mm.
Redoing everything. Check my understanding now. All the problem.
So tell me about your whiteboards, Bob.
So whiteboards, the students, I never did them vertically, but the students mostly stand when they do them. So it was Peter's second best to standing over a
Yep.
board. And they would have them laid down on these tables. And I always worked in groups of 4, but now I need to go to 3, which we figured out how to do because I got another science teacher who drinks the Kool-Aid.
But are the whiteboards the shower boards that you buy?
Yeah, they are the shower boards. So they're like
Yeah.
$12 a piece at Lowe's or whatever.
Oh, gosh, no, you have, yeah, you cut them into 6 pieces,
Yeah,
right?
you cut them into 6 pieces. So it's $12 for an 8x4. And I usually tell them I'm a teacher and then they cut them for me for free.
Yeah.
You can buy a bag of rags for a couple of bucks in the paint aisle.
Mm,
And then we just use dry erase.
Yeah.
Just about anything cleans them off. I've had some of these since they're more torn up, but I've had them since 2012.
yeah, yeah,
first started
I
getting
use, I put duct tape around the edges so they wouldn't get torn up.
Yeah, people do all that. And then I just got 2x4s with a slot that's slightly slanted cut into them, and then they put them up. And we have what we call board meetings and
Yep.
they present their boards. We do that both for laboratory work. So whenever they've done an experiment, they'll put up their data, explain how they did the lab, show what their graph is, and do all that, defend homework.
Yeah.
So,
And like Bob said, I'm fortunate. I have dry erase boards all around my room and So I can have all 30 kids up at the same time working at the dry erase boards, because I've done that for years now in just my regular math classes to get everybody up and doing problems at the same time. And that's a wonderful thing. The question I want to get to before we end here too, do you have plans to teach this at a core level? District has D-leveled recently. We have a range of learners of differing abilities. We actually, I guess you didn't talk about that yet.
Well, what we're going for, so yes. I want to bring it down to like an Algebra 1 and a physics level, which can be done. So the administration is half with me and half not with me on this. So we're doing a physics, right? The guy who drinks the Kool-Aid is talking about across the hall, who's read the math book too. He's teaching physics first this year with a very math light in it. And I just don't have time to jump in there and build that with him. So hopefully next year, and during this year, so next year we can implement that and be able to go to the administration, who's very open-minded and stuff, and say, here, we've got it put together and we found a math teacher. I think we have an
Yes, we
idea.
do.
I know who I want to put with them, and then maybe they'll let us do that
And we're
also.
fortunate because our principal is a math teacher, so that helps having her there. And then I have a new math teacher to the school last year who is really excited about doing this kind of stuff. So I was able to work his schedule to where he has all Algebra 1 this year, or every section of the Algebra 1, and then pre-calc also. So he's going to work in conjunction with the other physics teacher. And even though they're not going to be teaching together in the same class period, they're going to be collaborating and working and trying to kind of help develop that a little bit too, for those CP college prep level. Students take a physics class, Algebra 2 class, receiving 1 credit for Algebra 2 and 1 for this. Yeah, it's 1 combined class and they get 2 full credits, a full credit for the Algebra 2 and a full credit for the physics. You're welcome. I will just say from my perspective coming into this, like I said, it's been a really rewarding thing as a math teacher, and how rigid and structured we can be sometimes. Letting go and just letting the kids run the show has been so amazing and uplifting for me, because I come in here and these kids are excited to be here. They want to learn. They're benefiting from what we do in here. Our principal has told us when she has a bad day and she just wants to kind of get away, she comes down and sneaks in our room to see what the kids are doing, because it's a really great place to be. And we have big windows in the back and we see other kids that kind of walk by, and unfortunately everybody wants to be in this class, which is where it's good that we're pushing it down to the CP level too, so they can get a little bit the experience, even though it's not quite the same. But hopefully we can get the staffing in place and be able to get that to happen to where it's a combined class too, because it's so beneficial for those kids. How large is a typical class? We have about 60 between the 2 classes, a little less than that.
We run between 25 and 30 students, depending.
And that's because we want to make sure we have enough room,
Well, there's a lot
to do the
of,
labs.
yeah, it's probably, they're probably working on something lab-wise 25-30% of the time out there figuring stuff out. It's not like recipe labs, but basically the lab is just asking the question about the relationship between 2 variables, and then they got to go figure it out, collect data, and present it to their peers.
What does a typical day look like in terms of structure? How do you divide up the block? Well, like we were saying earlier, we have done in the past where maybe he'll do half of the physics and then I'll do the other half math, which is really not co-teaching, and that's what we're trying to get away from. Some days we would do it's all physics today, some days it was all math. But with this year, we're really trying to make a concerted effort to make sure that it's just everything. Maybe we'll have a 10 or 20 minutes of something where they're doing a lab, and then we're trying to integrate it so it's not broken up like that. We do realize there is content that does not apply to the physics at all. So those are times where I will have to have some time that's just math that doesn't really relate to. And I think that's an important thing too, because the last thing I want is these kids walking out of here and thinking, well, Algebra 2 only relates to physics. Not that I think they would ever think that, but we want to be able to show them there are other scenarios and other contexts and things like that. And so there are times when it's kind of all math and there's not really any physics involved.
Yes.
And we have a lot of fun, as you can see, which is good. If you're gonna try and do something like this, make sure you guys get along. It's an
Yes.
important thing.
And don't take things personally.
No.
And let go a little bit.
Yes, because we are not all the same person,
No.
but you can learn a lot from each other. It's a really good thing to, I've never collaborated with a teacher before. I'm a control freak, so as most of us math teachers probably are. I don't know about science teachers, a little bit,
I don't know.
but
I can only speak for myself. So
but
I have trouble letting go sometimes.
Yeah. it's good. Well, by all means, please put the email into, the exit ticket, and we're happy to respond and share whatever we have, and collaborate. If you guys are thinking about doing something like this, we're always looking for people to help give us ideas too. We don't know everything. We're just trying to kind of go with this, like Bob always says in the class, failure in the sense of failure is a good thing. We fail a lot, I would say, as we're going through this, and that's okay. That's how we learn, and that's what we teach our students. And we're not afraid to say that we don't have all the answers. We're always looking for someone out there that has good ideas that can help us as we develop it, because we think it's worth it, not just for our school and our classes and our kids, but the more we can push things like this out there for the entire state and the entire country, the better our kids will be.
Yeah, I'll piggyback on that. So I'm happy to share anything, happy to get feedback from you on what we have, happy to collaborate. Some of the best and stuff I've gotten through once becoming a teacher is collaboration with other teachers and other teachers being willing to share their work with me, and being able to take that and tweak it and go back and ask questions, and not being afraid to look like a big dummy. So just some of my problems sometimes. So. Cool.
Well,
All right.
science is nothing more if it's not collaborative.
This is true. This is true.
All right. Wow.
Well, thank you all so much again for joining us.